Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time as we continue our Val Kilmer season. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Murphy, and on today's show, we are talking about 1996, The Ghost and the Darkness. As always, alongside me to dissect this one, I have my co-host. You know who he is. He's a screenwriter. He's 1/3 of the Bloodhound Picks podcast, and he is a man beyond conversion. It's Mr. Craig Draheim. Hey, Craig.
You know, Scott, you're a rather cheerful fellow when you get to know you. And that's no better. That's probably the same
it's
amount
on
of
par.
accent that Val Kilmer has. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a similar, yeah. But that is not all. As we also have, I was going to say special guest, but regular returning guest. And at this point, basically the fourth member of the show. He's a YouTuber, he's an actor, and he's the devil himself. It's Mr. Caleb Knutson.
I told you you'd hate me.
I thought you'd pick a Douglas line, but yeah, okay. Yeah,
well, you did the devil line. I'm like, I can't repeat that, so we'll go Tom Wilkinson here.
Yeah,
mustache twirling Tom Wilkinson. Let's build the railroad.
That's true. It's just because Douglas said that he was the devil. It was good. I like your fun British villain accent as well. But now on to today's film. Now on to today's film, which was released on October the 11th, 1996. It was directed by Stephen Hopkins, a director who we'll definitely cover again because he also directed such 90s action films as Predator 2, Judgment Night, Blown Away, and Lost in Space. Right. But, also, if you've not seen it, you can check out what is probably his best movie, The Life and Death of Peter Sellers. That's a really good one.
It's one of my favorite biopics, just because I'm a huge Peter Sellers fan. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's real good. And, I love Peter Sellers, too. The movie was written by one of the greatest screenwriters of all time, not particularly on form for this movie, who his notable credits, I've not said who it is, it's William Goldman. And his notable credits, of course, include the likes of All the President's Men and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time, The Princess Bride. It was also based, very, very loosely based, on the semi-autobiographical book The Man-Eaters of Saviour by Colonel John Henry Patterson. Review-wise, it is currently sitting on a 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb, 50% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 50 reviews. It doesn't have a Metacritic score, and it's got a 3.2 on Letterboxd. Box office wise, according to Wikipedia, it made $75 million off of a $55 million budget. Although I cannot kind of confirm that was what it made because the sites I normally use for this, Box Office Mojo and the numbers, only cite its domestic gross, that's its gross in the United States, which was $38.6 million and doesn't have a worldwide gross for it. The worldwide gross number comes from a website that I've not used before called Worldwide Box Office. So, yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe they're not the kind of website that is known as Box Office Mojo and the numbers, but that doesn't mean that they're wrong. But I thought I'd flag that up. Finally, I'd also thought I would flag up that it won an Oscar for sound editing for a Bruce Stambler, and it was nominated for a Razzie, Worst Supporting Actor for Val Kilmer, which kind of seems weird because I think Val's really the lead, so that seems odd. And he lost out to that award to Marlon Brando for his performance in The Island of Dr. Moreau. And if you're wondering, yes, Val was also nominated for his performance in The Island of Dr. Moreau. So yeah, that's your background details for this film. Oh, the last one that I forgot to mention as well, it was listed by Roger Ebert as one of the worst movies of 1996.
Oh,
that's it.
Come on, Mr. Ebert. Unwarranted, in my opinion. The worst, really? Come on.
I mean, it seems kind of harsh, but then we talked about it before in another episode. Roger Ebert listed amongst his most hated list, on his most hated list of like movies of all time, is Stargate, which is a perfectly serviceable 3-star sci-fi adventure, and I feel it's massively undeserving for it to be on any worst, most hated kind of lists. But you know, so. Us and Roger don't always see eye to eye as much as he was a great film critic in his day.
Well, I have his book, I hated this movie, of his, like, the movies he hated most of all time. And there's like Ace Ventura in there, which then the story goes, he actually then kind of revised his whole thing. I don't know. In the documentary Heckler, it talks about it, where like he talked about how much he hated Ace Ventura, and then he went back and said, "Oh well, it's not as bad as I said it was," or something. Yeah,
I'm sure that had nothing to do with backlash and fan mail, and things like that.
Yeah.
Mind you, I mean, like I think. It's you know, being someone who's written film reviews myself, and that, you know, sometimes you go into a movie in the wrong place, or you read the movie wrong the first time you see it, or something, you know, and then you go back and watch it a second time and it plays differently to you, and you know, like, so I think it's perfectly. I think sometimes revised opinions are seen as like, oh, flip-flopping, but like I think it's perfectly okay to like revise an opinion on a film, because maybe you were in the wrong mood for it, or you know, maybe there was outside factors, or maybe you just you see different things in the movie that you didn't see the first time, or there's more depth to the movie than you saw the first time, or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or maybe you watched it when you were of a younger age, and then you're older, and you're like, "Oh, I get it. I get what these people were doing." Okay. Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about film reviews and film criticism, and I teach my students, like, hey, it all depends on who you are, what your background is, what your how your day went, like you were saying, your religious background, things like that. So that's why we're doing this, right?
That is
to give our own opinion.
Yeah. And, you know, we never have ever said on this podcast that this is like cast in stone, you know, that our opinion is firmly right. It's just our opinion. You know, you can take it or leave it. You can rail against it if you want. I don't mind. If you think I'm reading a film wrong, you're perfectly within your rights to do that. And if you agree with me, that's cool too, you know, like whatever it is. But yeah, we're just here talking about a film, and sometimes even the three of us don't necessarily agree on certain things, and that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, fine. Oh, okay. Yes.
Yes, that's our message of peace for the internet that will go completely.
It's like, yes, Dad, fine.
Yeah.
Caleb's like, no, actually, no. Every opinion that I have is entirely correct.
And I hope the people that watch it get my sarcasm behind it. I know that's very hard to ask of some people that have watched my channel. Like, I hope sometimes I have to elaborate or say, like, I just so you know that was a joke.
A little disclaimer.
It's kind of like Val Kilmer in this movie. Yeah, that was an Irish accent, kind of. In this scene, it was. I don't know.
This may be a character with an Irish accent. I haven't quite decided yet. Val, we've made the whole movie. I mean, it's in post now. I just don't know. I just, like I sometimes, I want to play him with an Irish accent. Sometimes I don't want to play him with an Irish accent. I'm trying to find the character. The movie is literally out in theaters, Val. Like, what are you doing? Oh dear. Okay. So, who wants to... Well, actually, we've not done the kind of... we've skipped a step. Usually
Yes.
I ask about the relationship everybody has to the movie. I'm going to kick the ball off with this one. So, this season has been an interesting season for me because, like, part of the inspiration of doing it was I basically not seen a lot of the movies we are covering this season, but, I like Val Kilmer in a lot of other movies, some of the non-action movies he does from the 90s, and a bunch of other stuff, and it was seeing him in Tombstone, kind of sparked interest about kind of doing this season where we're doing the Kurt Russell season. So this is another one like The Real McCoy, like Thunderheart, I've not seen. And like The Real McCoy and like Thunderheart, I thought I hadn't heard of it, but then I watched the trailer and I was like, okay, I think this seems vaguely familiar. And watching the film, at least one scene seemed vaguely familiar. So I think I do have, I just wasn't kind of, the title didn't strike a chord with me, but I definitely... I'm more aware of this movie than I was of either Thunderheart or The Real McCoy, which literally I was just like, oh, these are movies that exist that I previously had no idea about. So that's basically me with this movie. First time watch for me. So we'll cut to Craig next.
Yeah, because mine is basically the same. I think I probably watched maybe 3 minutes somewhere in the middle when it was on TV at one point, because there, like with Scott, there was a scene that seemed vaguely familiar. I know I had some VHSs when I was a kid that had this trailer on it, and I've seen the poster or the DVD cover a ton, but it's been in that weird realm because I've seen it. Like, I've never really been the biggest fan of kind of like big game hunting movies, which is what I thought it was. But then I saw people posting from the horror stuff that I do that they kind of considered it a horror movie. And so I've never really known exactly where it fit. So this is the first time watch for me as well.
Okay. And there is obviously a reason we're cutting to Caleb last, and that's because Caleb asked to be on this episode, so we know he has seen this movie. So tell us a little bit more about your relationship with this movie, Caleb.
Yeah, this was a film back in the good old days of video rental stores that we would rent again and again and again, and we would watch it multiple times a day. This film just reminds me of my dad, because when he was a kid, his dad, Grandpa, was a pastor, and he did a mission, or he was a missionary over in Madagascar, actually. So any film that dealt with like an African story or an African legend, kind of like this one, we would watch. So I've seen this hundreds of times. At the end of this movie, Samuel says, if you want to see the lions, go to the Field Museum in Chicago. I have been to the Field Museum in Chicago and have actually looked at these lions. And spoiler alert, I was not afraid.
Okay.
But yes, I have a big connection with this film. It was I always thought it was a great time. And Craig, with your description of it, is it horror? It's definitely not about game hunting, because these people are just building a bridge.
Yeah.
I think every decade there's that movie that comes out that tries to be Jaws, and they just can't do it. I feel like this movie is trying to be the African Jaws. We have dolly zooms like crazy on Val Kilmer's face, and we have the lions going through the wheat fields, and you see the tail flipping up like the fin of the shark in Jaws. This is nowhere close to the quality of what Spielberg did with Jaws, but this is the 90s African Jaws movie to me.
I have heard this described as Jaws with paws.
Boom, that is golden. I love that.
But I know looking into it, or when doing some of the research, which I know you'll get more into, Scott, but what he wanted to make it, it was like Jaws meets Lawrence of Arabia. Part of, I guess, the marketing for it, the pitch, I guess.
Yes, I think that's what by he meaning William Goldman, that was his original vision of it. Which again, yes, it is odd tonally. It is. I mean, it's not quite Lawrence of Arabia meets Jaws. I mean, it's kind of Out of Africa meets Jaws.
I would say
there it is. Yeah,
or something like The Bridge Over the River Kwai, or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not getting any Lawrence of Arabia in this.
No, not really.
No.
But this is, I think this is one of those films as well where you're like, oh, okay, like all of your knowledge of Africa film has come from other films, and the book this is based, basically I feel like the knowledge of Africa comes from the book this is based on, Heart of Darkness, and some African films like Out of Africa, The African Queen. It's okay.
Yeah, it's a romantic's idea of what Africa is.
Yes, it's movie Africa. And like in a lot of Hollywood movies, this is a thing that white people do a lot, we refer to Africa as if it's a country.
Yep.
Well, what's interesting, it's the same that happened in Thunderheart, they'll give it credit for, is that with Thunderheart, it kind of works differently than the white savior. And, if you hear the episode where it acknowledges the fact, and it kind of does that, where this, there are elements where there's the character that says, of course you're going to be fine because you're white. Or
yes, but I have problems with that. I have problems.
We'll get into that when we get.
Not because that character says that. It's because of the reaction of the movie to that line. I'll try not to get too political in this episode, because that might turn people off. People don't like too much politics in their movie podcasts, apparently. Anyway, we will get to that when it arrives. But we should probably at this stage, as always, we're now 20 minutes into the episode or something, so we should probably kick this movie off and start talking about the plot. So Caleb, do you want to get the ball rolling on the plot?
Absolutely, why not? The year is 1898, so it was a long time ago, and the colonel, an Irish colonel who is a master bridge maker or foreman or whatever the technical term is, Colonel John Patterson, played by Val Kilmer, is called in by Robert Beaumont, who is a railroad financier, played by Tom Wilkinson, and Beaumont is charging Patterson to build a bridge in Savo, Africa, or Savo, Kenya, Africa, I should say. And it's such a mustache twirling villain, even though he's not the villain of this movie. He's there to say, I'm going to make you hate me. The pleasure that I get is tormenting employees that are under me, people like yourself. Only because he wants to be the first to have a bridge connecting the UK to all through Africa, or not exactly sure exactly where, but he wants the bridge built. And Patterson takes on the job, and we have a lot of lines in here that makes this character obviously our hero, and this character that we're going to love because he has a wife who is pregnant and is due to give birth in 6 months, and he's going to be there for the birth because he's going to be a good dad. And he's always wanted to go to Africa, so he's like, I'm going to take a little vacation while you're pregnant, honey. And then I'll be back just in time for, the birth. So yeah, love ya. Bye.
Yeah. So like a couple of things I wanted to point out about this that I wanted to talk about was, first of all, Tom Wilkinson's performance. Like, the interesting thing about like Tom Wilkinson being in this movie was, like, this movie came out in 1996, and I didn't think that Tom Wilkinson like really started appearing in American movies until post Full Monty, but this is a year before Full Monty, so that was interesting to me. But also in terms of his performance, like, it's weird. Like, he is acting like a villain, but he partly because it just doesn't land. Partly because he seems like he's like he's acting it. Like, because he has all these lines of, like, I am a monster. And it's just, like, he comes across as, like, really insecure, that he's, like, trying to prove to people that he's a bad guy. And it's like, okay, it feels like you're trying too hard. And then also because Val doesn't react to things, of just, like, he's not, like, disgusted by him or whatever. He's just like, yeah, okay, right, yeah, I'm just wanting to get the mission briefing, really. I don't know what all this is. Like, he doesn't react as if, like, this is like a hiss-worthy villain. He just reacts like, yeah, okay, I'm kind of confused by what you're doing, but it's, yeah, whatever. You're a monster. You treat people bad. You're gonna want to want me to hate you or something. Okay. Anyway, off to Africa. So that was weird to me. And also, yes. Val's wife, Colonel John Patterson's wife, is played by Emily Mortimer, who is totally wasted in this movie because, she is one of those there's two stereotypical wife characters. There is a stereotypical wife character who is the shrew, who is always moaning at the husband and nagging and like getting on his back and all that and telling him he's a piece of shit. And then there's the other stereotype, which is the dutiful, perma-smiling, just completely subservient wife who's just like all about like her husband's dreams and doesn't have any dreams herself. She's just happy at home with the child, or just, if they don't have a child, just happy at home. And like her line about like, you go, you build bridges, just you follow the rivers. It's just like, God, this dialogue was written by William Goldman. Like.
When she said that line, you need to go where the rivers are, I'm like, you're in the UK. There are plenty there where he could be there for the birth and for the pregnancy. But okay, fine. He really wants to go to Africa.
Yeah, so he does.
And the interesting, I don't know, if this was made, which it'd be hard to make today, but you look at it too, and there's so many points where it's like they start the conversation about colonization and it being kind of a bad thing, but then it goes back to that old school of Hollywood filmmaking, or I guess white storytelling, where they're so happy that the characters feel like they're so happy that they're being colonized by the English. Or whatever country.
This movie's politics towards colonialism is, we'll get into that further. Like, I don't want to rant too much now.
It's hard to talk about this movie without the that's gonna be the tricky part.
Yeah. Well, and I think once we get to the Lions, like once they reveal themselves, I feel like this movie could have been more and could have gotten into those politics a lot more. But once the Lions come out, just all of that kind of goes out the window, because you have this story of this white man building a bridge in Africa, and you could talk about building bridge between cultures and continents. There could have been something there, but it never gets there. At least I don't feel like it does.
Oh, that's because, like, as soon as Michael Douglas enters the movie, 45 minutes in, it becomes a different film.
Oh, right. It becomes the redneck Michael Douglas. I'm here. I'm the devil. So that's right. And I should also mention that this movie is being narrated by Samuel, who is played by John Canny or Canny. I'm not sure how it's pronounced.
It's Canny, but
I think it's Canny too. But he plays King T'Chaka for those listening and have seen him Captain America: Civil War and Black Panther, which blew my mind. I totally forgot he was in this. But he says, he has a line here, that even the most impossible parts of this story really happened.
Apart from all the things
when a movie tells you that, you have to take at face value, because that movie has never lied to you before.
Yes. Apart from all the things that very clearly didn't happen. But anyway, we march on to Africa, specifically Kenya. Not that anybody says. I mean, I think like it probably wasn't called. I don't think it was called Kenya at the time. But anyway, modern day name Kenya. And we cut there, and everything had like different names back in colonial times. Anyway, we move on, and
Patterson... Patterson has arrived at the train station where he meets up with kind of like his right-hand man, or at least the overseer of things that are happening, and kind of a liaison between different cultures. The man called Starling, played by Brian McCarty, who I will be honest, I thought was played by Michael Palin from Monty Python originally when I saw this. But it's not. It's Brian McCarty.
That'd be great.
No.
I always thought as a kid, I'm like, that's the guy from Monty Python.
You realize Michael Palin is not Scottish.
I know, but Michael Palin sure did a bunch of Scottish accents, a lot of skits.
Yeah, no,
a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
but I mean, what I like, what I'll give this movie too is that it sets you up with these two. So it was, obviously this we'll start. I don't want to spoil it as we'll get into it. With Starling, and then what's the other? The foreman, Mahina. Where like it gives you these incredibly wholesome characters that you're like, I would love to see more of you in the movie, and then you don't. You just not at all. They're just like fodder.
The ghost in the darkness happens, basically.
I don't know. Like, I would agree with you on Mahina. I was definitely for. I mean, we're kind of skipping ahead. I was definitely for more Mahina. I wasn't necessarily desperately after more Angus. I was kind of disappointed that he was the one Scottish character in the movie. I was like, oh God, shut up, you sanctimonious idiot.
The struggle is the glory.
Oh, God.
Or whatever he says.
Sorry to any Christian listeners.
These two meet, and they get on the train, and this is where we get the kind of the introduction to movie Africa, as you were calling it, Scott, the romanticizing Africa. We see a bunch of giraffes and hippos that farts out of their mouths. One of the few Irish accent lines that we get here in the beginning.
Yeah, this is a funny part of the movie as well, because this is where we find out that Colonel John Henry Patterson is a proto David Attenborough, because we just get a random like nature documentary for a second.
Yeah, and Starling is looking at him like, I've been here for years. been here for like 10 minutes and you're schooling me on recording in progress. Sorry?
We found out that Colonel John Henry is is a proto David Attenborough, and we get a mini nature documentary for about 5 minutes.
And Starling is annoyed that Patterson knows so much because he's been there for like years, and Patterson's been there for I think like 10 minutes or 24 hours, whatever. But this is to get us to see the beauty that is Africa. But then as the train pulls into Savo, you see that, not all of Africa is beautiful, because Savo is hell on earth. Or as Samuel will say, I believe he says Savo is a place of sacrifice or a place of slaughter. That's what it was.
Place of slaughter, yeah.
Yes. And here we do get introduced to Samuel, our narrator. We actually see him in person, and really Samuel to me is like the most lovable character by far, because he is the liaison between everyone, every character, every culture here. He has great lines of how the Africans hate the Indians and the Indians hate other Indians because, of course, they're getting a bunch of, I guess, were they slaves in here? I'm not sure.
No, slavery had been abolished, but then they would have been being paid a pittance, so they would have been getting paid fuck all. But so it was, slavery by any other name, it wasn't officially slavery, but it kind of is.
It's definitely less than minimum wage,
Yes, the minimum wage had not been invented yet.
There was no health benefits, no dental, that at that time.
Obviously, once we get over to the hospital that is being ran by Bernard Hills Hawthorne, just this sick, disgusting-looking place, and Hawthorne is there saying, like, "Yep, this is my hospital. Oh, look, another a bridge maker is here. This is going to be great. We'll see him fail, and Beaumont will send another person in a couple of months."
Yes, and this is like our kind of first hint of this film's kind of laissez-faire attitude towards colonialism, because Dr. Hawthorne makes an entirely valid point about basically the British Empire doesn't care about Africa. The only reason it's making railroads is because of the ivory trade, and it's all about making the rich richer. Which I was like, yeah, seems like a good point. I'm sure we'll jump off of this. No, he just gets questioned, why'd you work here then, you fuck? And then that shuts him down, and we move on. So that's that.
Yeah, I thought him having that line, I was expecting, like, even if it didn't delve into it more, that he would at least be that character. Like, he's like kind of the cynical one against the British Empire, but he is British, and I don't know. You would have this element where he would bring up more stuff, but then you really don't. Yeah, there's nothing else he says.
Nope.
Yeah, it's what I was saying. Like there is a movie here that dives into that, and it gets deeper and gets more philosophical and political, but it starts and then it stops here. But he does have one of the best doctor lines and doctor pieces of advice that I've ever heard, not just in film, but just in life ever. The first line that we hear him is like, "This is my hospital, and my advice to you is don't get sick."
It's good. It's good.
I like that. I like you. Could you be my doctor?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
and we get to the river. Patterson checks out the river site. I was having even the first time I remember watching this as a kid, when we see the river of where they're building the bridge, just the way that it was shot, it looks so small. I was getting Robin Hood Men in Tights vibes, where it's like this is not that critical.
Yeah, well, that's the crazy part, is because watching it, he's talking about well, this is going to be more difficult. I'm not even going to try and do Val Kilmer. Irish accent, but it would just be me talking normal, so I won't do it. He's like, this is going to be more difficult than I thought. Like, but how? It's so tiny. It doesn't look difficult at all.
Yeah. I'm on one side, I'm on the other side. I'm on the East Bank, I'm on the West Bank. But apparently it is. I don't know. I don't build bridges. So, well, obviously I don't build bridges, but yeah, when we're talking with Hawthorne and he's given the whole ivory trade lecture, he does mention that a couple of his men have been mauled recently by lions. There is a man-eater in the vicinity. And very cheekishly goes up to Patterson and says, "And what are you going to do about it?" And Patterson, again, in the Val Kilmer Irish accent, says, "Well, I will sort it out this evening." Kind of the line of the movie, "I will sort this out."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we cut to that night. Patterson is in the tree. Starling is there because he wants adventure. He wants to be a part of it. And they're there that night, and they're just waiting to see if a lion does show up. One does show up, and Patterson does shoot it in between the eyes, kills it with one shot. And that brings in good vibes and good feelings for everyone, and everyone is happy that Patterson killed the man-eater. Or so we thought.
Absolutely. Although I do want to mention, again, that Angus is quite an irritating character. We get more of his being irritating because he's just in the tree, whinging about cramp. Shut up, Angus. Nobody cares.
Well, you can get down, but you won't get too far. The lion would eat you. Or however he said that line.
No, so bad. Just the way you said that, Caleb. No, I'm just,
I guess
Val Kilmer got his Irish accent from the Lucky Charms advert.
Yeah. Really, when he does it, where does he get it from? I don't know. It has to be
just trying to get from the Lucky Charms.
Yeah, that's the only way. But yeah, so this is so this brings in good fortune, and everyone is cheering. Months go by. I have here in my notes. This is where
7
I started
weeks.
thinking.
7 weeks go by.
Oh yes, that's right. Because Patterson is saying to Starling that he wants him to build it in 4 weeks or whatever, and Mahina says, "I've killed a lion before." And Starling says, "How many shots did you take?" And Mahina has probably the biggest mic drop out of anyone in this movie and says, "I used my hands." Great line. Love that. And I think that just leads towards what, Craig, you were saying, just Mahina's another great character that you want to see more of.
Yeah, well, because then even when he's writing the letter to his wife, and then because he's writing the letter and mentions Mahina, you're like, oh, Mahina's dead. But he talks about how, great Mahina's been, and then they have these moments where it shows them, like, when the bridge is going smoothly, and they're, like, using their hand symbols to each other, and they're kind of laughing about it.
Yeah, which is kind of played weird, because it's like, it's not entirely obvious if it's being played as kind of a laugh, or it's like a kind of serious bonding thing, or like, it's just kind of odd.
I think it's just kind of a symbol between them, probably that they got over the 7 weeks, because they were laying the foundation. I think it went successfully, and they're like, yeah. But this is where.
Oh, I should also mention before you say anything else, Caleb. I should also mention, because Craig mentioned the letter, that one of the things that really cracked me up in the letter was when he was doing his full Irish accent, and he's like, "Remember, honey, when they said that God invented liquor so Ireland wouldn't rule the world?" I was like, and it just made me think of that episode of Family Guy where Ireland's like this future society, and then then they start drinking, somebody introduces drink, and like it just all falls apart. So that kind of cracked me up.
I'm very glad you mentioned that line, because I do have that in my notes of, God created the Irish, or created liquor so Irish wouldn't rule the world. And I was like, do you know that, Patterson? Are you Irish? Would you know that? I don't
Debatably
believe that you would know that, sir.
Oh,
man.
dear. Yeah.
But yeah, this is. I also have here when they do lay the foundation, and Mahina looks out amongst the tall grass, the wheat fields. This is where we get our first little Jaws, or stealing from the film Jaws, of the lion. You see his hide, his tail kind of flapping in the fields. There's something out there that we never see. And I remember wondering as a kid, like, are we ever going to see the lions? Kind of like how, like, are we ever going to see the shark? Until eventually we do.
Yeah. We almost see too much of it, I would argue.
We see some CGI visual effects cutting in of lions in this movie, yeah.
So, like you said, Craig, very much the letter spells Mahina's doom, and soon after, a lion attacks the camp and drags Mahina through a field, and he is torn to shreds.
And this lion is pretty, for as big as it is, pretty stealthy, because Mahina is sleeping kind of in the middle of the tent or something. And he is just, I don't even know how it's set up, but yeah, he's dragged straight out like nothing.
It's kind of like the opening, again, I keep going back to Jaws, but it's kind of like the opening where the girl is swimming in the ocean.
Yeah.
And she gets kind of like bitten a little bit. She's like, what? And she kind of goes under, and then all of a sudden she gets dragged down. Basically the same thing here. He gets kind of pulled a little bit. He's like, what? He's woken up. He's like, what's going on? And he's dragged through the fields and torn to shreds. And we see him being eaten by the buzzards the next morning. But
we learned that, isn't it? The blood was licked off of him, and that it's something that lions don't do in terms of the kill. I can't Hawthorne.
So the lion licked his skin off and drank his blood, and then ate him from the feet upwards while he was still alive.
Yes.
The amazing line from the doctor. How does lions don't do this?
It's a very particular MO that this lion has.
Yeah. How he was able to figure out that order of the eating, I don't know.
Yes.
He was.
Autopsies were obviously famously reliable back in
1998.
Oh,
yeah. But I will add in, because I know we talked about it before we start recording, too, and that as much crap as we are going to giving Val Kilmer's accent, apparently this is the one movie that we've talked about so far where he was great to work with on set. And,
yes,
this is something he was really interested in, giving it his all.
That is true. It was another actor who we've not got to yet, but we've already mentioned, that caused trouble to both the writer and the director, apparently. So we'll talk more about that when he properly makes his introduction.
Yeah. And I will say I am giving Kilmer a lot of shit during this retrospective, but I do like him here. I do really enjoy him. He gives a nice little presence, I think.
It's interesting because I was thinking about this. Like, I don't mind him here, but there is part of me that kind of sees why he didn't make it as like a proper Hollywood leading man for like a lot of years. Because when I think about it, Val Kilmer has a very specific energy, and I think that being a leading man somehow douses his energy a little bit. You know, unless he's given a very specific role, like something like Jim Morrison in The Doors or whatever. Like, basically the roles I like him in the best are like Top Gun and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Tombstone. And, like, you know, I mean, obviously in leading performances, I would say, like, Top Secret and The Doors are tops for me. But, like, there's a lot of... He seems to work better as a spice rather than the...
Yeah.
I was gonna say, according to the poster and according to the Razzies, he's supporting here. He's not leading.
Yeah.
Yes, apparently, yes. Michael Douglas, who is the producer on the movie, funnily enough, gave himself top billing. So.
Well, no, I mean, I agree with the Val Kilmer thing because in the same way, I know we've talked about it before on some episode, or maybe not even on an episode, but actors like Colin Farrell, and there's just a ton of those actors where they try and make them a lead man in these type of roles, and they don't work, and then you see them in these other where they're either the supporting, or they're kind of in these more these offbeat leading characters, and they work. Yeah. So well.
Yeah, he just doesn't work as a kind of straight Hollywood leading man. Yeah, he can be a leading man, but generally more in kind of offbeat, kind of indie kind of pictures.
And I will say that Tom Wilkinson is another one of those actors where when he is a lead, or when he does have a lead, it's like, no, that doesn't work for you. But movies like this, Full Monty, where he's part of an ensemble at least, or when he's a supporting, I think he's golden.
I was looking at his credits and I was like, actors just live weird lives. I was like just looking through his credits and I was like, oh, Tom Wilkinson in the critically acclaimed drama In the Bedroom in 2001. You know what else he starred in 2001? The Martin Lawrence comedy Black Knight. The fuck?
The man is in every movie. He's like a Skarsgård. It's like a movie needs to have a Skarsgård or Tom Wilkinson.
Yeah, he's there, man. He's
yeah.
Well, my mother-in-law was watching. I didn't even realize they kind of play. He's kind of a main character. He's in the what is it? Best Exotic Marigold Hotel.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. She was watching it. And I looked down. I was like, oh, there he is.
I think every old British actor is is like, oh, of course Judi Dench is here. Oh, look.
Yep.
Yeah. Maggie Smith.
Yeah, Maggie Smith. Of course Maggie Smith's in this, but it's just like, all your favorite old British thefts come to coming to this screen. But back to this is the moment that we were talking about earlier. We're coming to that moment. So after Mahina's fiery funeral, there is unrest. There is unrest in the camp, and the workers want to down tools. And the worker is led by Abdullah, and he's kind of making the point that really this is dangerous. I want to protect my people, kind of thing. I'm basically on Abdullah's side throughout the movie. And there's this moment where Abdullah says, "Oh well, of course you will, because you're white and you can do anything." When he's like, "Oh, I will build this bridge," and blah 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 blah. And so the movie does not react to this. It's not a funny line. It's not like we're supposed to be like, aha, you're calling out the white asshole. No, he is presented as basically the antagonist in this scene. And Samuel, because he is the stereotypical loyal black friend, he winces and he's like, oh, shouldn't say that. And basically, we're on the side of colonialism here. And
that's right.
That's
right.
Yeah, because the reaction isn't even by Patterson that he's upset, or it's just him basically calling Abdullah a coward. No, it's not because I'm white, it's because you're a coward. It becomes this weird.
Yeah, it's a really weird scene. It's a really weird, and it's like, you could just make this easy and we could be on if we were just all on the same page. And he's really pissy and patronizing about it. I was like, fuck off. Abdullah has a point.
And that's really the first moment in this film, because I think the big message that's not political or nothing deep like that. The big message of this film is to not be afraid. Because that's the closing line, is if you look into the lion's eyes, you will be afraid. And this is the first instance of you need to manage your fear. Okay. I don't think he's being fearful. I think he just has a frickin' point that they're not safe.
Yeah. Well, and then you even find out when Beaumont comes that by that point, like 30 or 40 are killed, and that's halfway through, or not even halfway through the movie. You're like, well, yeah, if 30 people have already been mauled by this point, not even acknowledging by the end how many people are actually killed.
Yeah, so like,
And
so
that-
we have that scene, and then like not just soon after that, because he doesn't in the first scene where he says, "Of course you worry because you're white." He just says like, "Oh, like it'd be much easier if we were all working on the same page." But yeah, a couple of scenes later, where like Abdullah, who again is just looking after his people who are getting paid basically nothing, and being like, you know what, you're actually getting paid a wage for this, like, we're just not quite all, basically forced to be here, and like it's within our rights to kind of be like, this is really dangerous. But no, then Abdullah is just called a coward by Patterson at that stage, and you're like, really? I don't like anyone in this movie now. I like Abdullah. I want a film about Abdullah forming a union.
The Bridge Builders Union of Savo.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're getting into my territory now. Coming up with the fake movies.
I'm sorry for stealing your shtick.
But just like this movie, they breeze over that, and we get into another kind of a montage of half of the workers building the bridge, and the other half are building the thorn fences, the thorn barriers around camps, around different parts of the building site. Which I was thinking, like, why weren't those built already? You're in Africa; those should have been there already, but they're doing it. And we cut to a nice little peaceful scene of Starling, who has been overseeing the building of the thorn fences, and he's talking with Samuel, and he's talking with Patterson, trying to convert them to his religion. And we get a great line from Patterson about how his father was Roman Catholic and his mother was Protestant. And probably one of the best lines of the movie, Samuel says, "I have 4 wives. Good luck."
Well, the interesting thing, like as we were told at the start of the movie, everything that we see here is true, apart from the fact that Colonel John Henry Patterson was A, not a bridge builder, just a soldier, and B, was a Christian, unlike in this movie where apparently he is beyond conversion.
The line was the things that happened in the movie, not like the history of the movie is true. The things that happen in the movie.
Yes, which is based on a true story, but not based. Okay, yeah, it's true. I mean, like it's fine. It's fine. There's plenty of films that are very, 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 very loosely based on true stories that I like. I'm just ripping it here.
Well, I will say, and then Samuel has the one other kind of comedic line where was it that Patterson writes to gets the letter from his wife, and he says, "Oh, you like her." Which, it's Patterson's wife. You'd hope so. But he goes, "Yes, I do." He's like, "I don't like my 4 wives," or something like that.
Yep.
I don't like any of mine.
And it's all pouty and stuff in a way.
No.
Yeah, that line reading is great. And I love how it's just like, because Val, this is, like, the Colonel John Patterson character just walks off camera. So you've just got like Samuel himself, like just saying that to nobody, just out loud, just being like, "I don't like any of mine."
Then why do you have them, Samuel? God.
Yeah, why'd you have 4 wives? I mean, come on.
But going back, so while Starling's doing that conversion, he's also talking about that his mother wanted him to be a pianist, but he was tone deaf, and he loved there's something about the getting his hands dirty in the blood because he's cleaning his hands off and they're all cut up and bloody.
Yeah,
And he asks if it's weird that he loves the blood or something like that.
Yes, it is weird, Angus.
Yes.
he likes that he's a working man and that he was doing some manual labor, I guess. So, but yeah, we cut to that scene where we're talking about the letter, and Samuel doesn't like any of his wives, and all of a sudden we have our second mauling, our second lion attack, attacking during the daylight, which is strange. And Patterson runs, Samuel joins him, Starling is there with him too with their shotguns, and they're creeping up on the lion who is devouring his kill. And just before Patterson's about to shoot the lion, all of a second male lion, jumps from the roof of the train station and kills Starling with his claws, and the two male lions run off into the fields. And Patterson says, "Oh God, there's two of them." And Starling is there dying in their arms, or is already dead, and Patterson says the line, or is delivering a prayer, or the story of Daniel from the Bible. So unfortunately, Starling was not able to convert, or maybe he was able to convert Patterson. Who knows? Maybe in the end he did.
Yeah, possibly.
And this is where Samuel, as the narrator says, they were called the Ghost and the Darkness, because
he said the title.
He said the title. The credits are rolling.
Everybody take a shot. He said.
Yeah, but these are two male lions. That doesn't happen, and that really doesn't happen. It's usually in a pride of lions. It's one male lion and then a bunch of female lions who are the ones that do the hunting. But yeah, this apparently has never happened before, and a lot of legends and supernatural stories are going out throughout the camp, and people are scared. The workers are scared.
Oh, here's a fun point from that I saw from the research. Basically, the lions in real life are maneless, but Hollywood thought that audiences wouldn't believe that, so gave them manes for the movie.
Yeah, there are pictures, I believe, on the Wikipedia page of this movie. There's a picture of them, and yeah, they look like two ghosts. It's a little haunting, but yeah, like you said, for Hollywood's sake, we have to have the lion manes, because the Lion King came out a couple of years before, and American audiences know what lions look like, and if they didn't have their manes, then that's no lion.
That's right.
But this is where we get the line where Samuel says Savo means a place of slaughter, and we cut to the scene what we were talking about. Abdullah and his workers, his people, are leaving, or at least trying to leave, and Patterson is there trying to convince him, like, no, please don't. Really, because he wants to keep his job. That's really the reason why he's saying it. But he's using it as an excuse to say, like, you need to conquer your fear, or you'll go home to your family and talk about how you were too afraid to deal with the lions and continue. And Beaumont comes off the train, and Abdullah and the workers go back to work, and Beaumont seems pleased until he asks for Starling. Samuel has I thought it was a funny line. It's kind of sad, but it's a funny line of like, well, here he comes, and Starling is coming in the coffin, being loaded onto the train.
Yeah,
I don't know what that says about me, but
no, I found that a funny line as well. I mean, if I cared about the character of Angus, maybe I wouldn't, but I don't. So.
Yeah. And then Patterson is trying to explain all the deaths that have happened and why production has slowed down. Apparently, he's requested for soldiers, a reinforcement of soldiers, and Beaumont has denied that request because, again, he is a monster and people hate him. And this is where we learn.
This is the thing. I think this is one of the mistakes the movie makes, is that we don't really see Beaumont. I mean, we know that he is evil because he is an evil colonialist, fair enough. Although this movie doesn't have a
Right.
problem with some colonialists, but let's not get into that. We'll maybe get into that further later. But the thing about him is we don't really see him do things. We just hear him keep saying that he's evil and like he doesn't care about people and I don't care about deaths. I only care about my knighthood. We just hear him talk about it, and you're like, it's like, why are you trying so hard to convince us that you're a really bad guy? I just don't understand. Like it kind of feels like he's just trying to convince us he's a villain rather than actually being a villain. It's very oddly written, I think.
To use a comparison, I mean, to like modern day, from '96 or whatever, he's basically like the Jeffrey Bezos of this movie, where he's that big, corporate rich guy who, I mean, he doesn't really do the villainous things, but the way that he treats his workers, the way, that he talks to people, he could come across as a villain. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but like we don't even see him. Like if we saw like more instances of that, of like him being like other than like telling, because he doesn't even really kind of tell off Patterson that much. He just kind of keeps telling him about how he's going to treat him badly and how he's going to make him hate him. So we don't see him like treat workers badly. We don't have kind of scenes of like him treating other people badly where you're like, right. Like we're just inferring that he's a dick because like of his position, and that he keeps telling us, the audience, how bad and awful he is.
Well, and then by the end, it doesn't really give a. After this scene, he's not. We don't see him anymore, so it doesn't give us the satisfaction of then having like Patterson complete the bridge or whatever it may be. That's
true. That's true. Like, because he is kind of set up as if he's going to be this major antagonist, and this is like 40 minutes into the movie. He walks out of this scene and he never comes back, and he's not even really mentioned again. And it's like, why is this character even here?
Again, this is trying to be Jaws. This guy is the mayor of the island. He's however, like you guys are saying, he's not doing anything to cause us to hate him other than him saying, "I'm a monster," twirling that beautiful mustache of his.
Yeah.
Literal mustache.
Yeah.
No.
Because he even hires Remington, so he even, it's not like, so he doesn't even perform the same function of like the mayor doesn't close down the beach, so you're like, what an idiot. Whereas like, he hires Remington, so it's like, well, I suppose, he did. Anyway, yeah.
Patterson shows him a trap that he has conceived of trapping the beast and shooting him. It's this, I guess, train trailer that the lion is going to enter in from one end, and the door will close behind him. There's a kind of a wooden cage kind of in the middle of the train cart, and then 3 marksmen will be on the other side. And once the lion is trapped, they will shoot him because they are point blank range away from him. Nothing could possibly go wrong. And that's where Beaumont says, "I'm going to call Reddington because this is a stupid idea." And I remember as a kid, and still to this day, I'm like, it sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah, it seems alright.
Seems pretty.
I felt
pretty good.
I felt the same way, that everybody keeps telling him how bad the idea is, except Remington later on. And I was like, no, I think that's such a smart idea. I feel like people have used that many times before.
Yeah, you put the bait in the trap, and the animal or whatever you're trying to trap trips the wire, and that's how traps work. Why is this such a bad idea? But we get the reason why it's such a bad idea, because they do. Patterson doesn't put himself in the train cart. Of course, he hires 3 marksmen, and they're sitting there that night. And
he doesn't hire 3 marksmen. He convinces a couple of Indian workers.
Okay. You're right. I keep colonialism. Here we go. That's right.
You less important Indian workers, can you do this incredibly dangerous thing for me while I hide in a tree?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Because he calls them, you're thieves, you're burglars, you're murderers. That's good. That's right. But yeah, they're there that night, and one of, I don't know who's called the ghost and who's called the darkness, but one of them enters the train cart, and seemingly they are trapped. But the lion is so menacing and so strong that his roar makes their ears bleed, and he starts tearing down, or at least seemingly tearing down the bars of the cage that they are in. And these three I have here, this is Three Stooges in Africa, where these three marksmen, point blank range, can't hit the lion. And but they do hit the hinge of the cage of the door, so the lion is able to break free. There's a lantern that's in there that gets knocked over, so the marksmen start burning alive. I have here in my notes, Scott, a callback to Backdraft, where Donald Sutherland looks at Baldwin and says, "Did the fire look at you? Or did the fire? If the fire did look at you?" Oh, because we get a nice close-up of the lion who is looking at the fire and the torture that it's bringing. Like, oh, the fire's looking at him.
Oh, yeah. And this movie is kind of connected to Backdraft in a way because, like, in Backdraft, the fire acts as if it has a consciousness and acts in the same way that an evil human villain would. And the lions in this movie also have a similar kind of MO, because as the movie goes on, they're basically like Jason from the Friday the 13th movies. Like, it's it gets sillier and sillier, and like I am here for it because like the first 45 minutes are kind of like pretty slow. I would say, and as the movie just like and kind of drops the kind of any pretense of, there is this kind of weird thing of like this weird tonal clash where you get like a B movie kind of smashing into like this kind of weird sorta kind of Oscar Beatty drama thing, and then like at this point in the movie, Michael Douglas is just about to arrive at like the 45-minute mark. It's just like, no, screw it. No, we are a boo movie after all. We couldn't make up our mind. We took 45 minutes to make this decision, but we're making it now.
No, and I agree with the Jason thing, because especially when the fire is going and the lion stands up against the bars and the way that they shoot it, and it's just standing there staring at them on its hind legs. It makes it, it's so much exactly like that. I was actually going to say, to try and find a wrestling reference for the both of you, because it's like this big hulking thing, and you have the fire, and you have like how it's peering down. It's so theatrical, and it is.
Dramatic close up is
my mind is going to Unforgiven 1998 Undertaker versus Kane in an Inferno match. I will set myself on fire. There it is. There's the wrestling reference.
There's the wrestling reference. We needed one. We always need one when you're on. Like that's the rules.
Well, and speaking of Kane, I mean, this is where the devil has come to Savo, and that devil is Michael Douglas as Charles Remington, who is a famous world hunter in this universe, because Abdullah they're not leaving, they're starting to revolt, they're starting to mutiny, and they're saying, none of this shit was happening until you came around, Patterson. And they're about to mob him until Remington comes in and holds Abdullah at gunpoint, and getting his workers to get back. And there's a line here. I know all three of us typically do this whenever we record, but again, having someone like lift something for like 45 minutes to an hour, where Charles Remington here is saying like, you sound like a guy who wants to live, and Abdullah says, absolutely, yes, affirmative, correct, please, yes, I could. Let's just, how many positive affirmations can you give here? But that's the famous line of Dula says, "The devil has come to Savo," and Remington says, "I am the devil." And Remington basically, well, I should say Douglas is here and basically takes over the entire movie.
Yeah, it's basically his movie from and like again, I'm kind of like as dumb as this movie gets. I'm kind of here for it because like Michael Douglas he makes choices. Choice number one, he has a mullet. Choice number two, for some reason, he's Southern. Like choice number three,
this world traveler is Southern. Yep, sure.
Yep, he certainly is. Choice number three, he randomly has a tragic backstory because he forced William Goldman to write that, and William Goldman really wasn't a fan. But yeah, no, he makes a lot of choices. Fun facts, back with research. So as you know, everything that we see here is entirely accurate, apart from all the things that aren't. And Remington, again, is completely fictionalized. It's just a character that William Goldman decided to write for the script. Not part of the historical event at all. Completely made up character. So there is that, and also originally the kind of producers of the movie wanted like either Sean Connery or Anthony Hopkins to play this role, but for some reason that didn't work out. And then apparently the producers were looking into getting Gerard Depardieu to do it, but Michael Douglas at that point decided no, that he wanted to play the role, which apparently caused Stephen Hopkins and William Goldman a massive headache.
Well, it's okay for Sean Connery because he ended up playing a big kind of game hunter in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, so he made up for it.
That's right. Yeah. The movie that caused him to retire. I'm trying to picture Anthony Hopkins in this role, and I know around this time he was in The Edge.
Yeah, that would be a year later. Movie. That would be 97.
But even in that movie, I'm not getting like action hunter vibes from him. Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Although I could hear some of the lines in his in his Welsh accent. I am the devil. That's a terrible Welsh accent.
That was great. Do that again.
Apologies to any Welsh listeners that we may have. I think I was worse than the Irish accent that I did earlier. I apologise to my fellow Celtic brothers.
It was not worse than the Irish accent that we get from Val Kilmer at this point, because I feel like I start hearing the attempts of an Irish accent more when Kilmer is on screen with Douglas, as opposed to when Kilmer is all by himself or when he's with Samuel. But when Douglas is here, I feel like Kilmer is trying harder to do it. I don't
Michael
know.
Douglas, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And then you've
got
like Douglas being like a redneck and Val doing an Irish accent. It's very fun.
Go
ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say quickly, but it's weird with Remington too because he's not even. It's like he's a big game hunter that doesn't like hunting, and he talks about he hates it, and it's just he's good at it type of thing. I don't know. Like that's how they try and make his tragic story. He's just good at killing things.
And yeah, they really try to shoehorn that in. Like, and you can really tell that this was like a Douglas implant because like. Basically, Goldman's idea was he's supposed to be this kind of larger-than-life, mysterious, enigmatic character that not a lot of people know his origins or whatever, so there's very little known about him. He's just this kind of, almost like this myth, this legend, that's kind of, big game hunter. But then, like, Michael Douglas was like, no, I gotta have some tragic backstory to do with a civil war or something, and losing my family. And it's like, Do you? No, is that really adding anything? It's really not.
Yeah, the family. I think the family part. I think is very much. But I do kind of like the concept of I'm a big game hunter, or I'm a big hunter, and I'm really good at it. And because you kind of get the apatheticness from him, at least in the first part of him on screen here, because it's like, oh, these are regular lines. This is an everyday occurrence for me. It's not until we really get to the lion's lair, their den, to where you kind of see that switch in him. Like, okay, this is not. Lions don't do this. This is not right. So I kind of like that. We don't get that little aside though just yet, because Remington goes to the hospital. And one of the best reactions I've ever seen, and it's the reaction that I have whenever I go downstairs to change my cat's litter. He enters the hospital and he goes, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. We're moving this hospital. So they're going to build a new hospital, and they're going to use the old one as another trap, another bait house, I guess. 'Cause it just smells of human flesh and human blood. And Hawthorne is there opposing it, because this is a stupid idea. Apparently every idea that these hunters have in this film is stupid. But Remington doesn't like being questioned, because when he's questioned, that means people think that he doesn't know what he's doing, according to Remington.
Yes. And, of course, Remington knows all, because Michael Douglas was a producer in this movie, so he's the coolest character.
I feel like he's just off of his, it was years before, but he's just in his Jewel of the Nile garb. The salt and pepper hair, basically. That's great.
I was kind of thinking the same thing. I was just like, all right, maybe it's grown old with him. It's just like, he's still the same Romancing the Stone outfit, just like, I don't know, like 12 years later. Like
he met
that's
the girl,
why it's
and
like
then
more
became a
stained
game
and
hunter.
stuff now. Yeah.
Yep. So we go after the hospital. We go to the night scene where they have a nice little campfire. We failed to mention that Remington has brought along a bunch of Maasai warriors with him, because he's got connections, and the Maasai, they're doing their little tribal ceremonies, and of course Douglas, being the cool guy he is, gets in on the dancing Maasai action, which I have in my notes here as this is hilarious.
Yes, Michael Douglas would have been roughly 52 when this movie was made, so just seeing middle-aged Michael Douglas dancing with Maasai warriors.
And he's not even given. It's not like the dancing isn't that energetic or anything like that. He's just like sitting there doing this little bob thing. I don't know how to explain it. It makes it even funnier, I guess, than that.
It's like he's trying to do the wave from the waist up. and I think it's so bad that the camera and the move cuts to the next day. It like does it for like a second, and they're like, no more. Let's go to the next day for the hunt, please.
I think the movie does get embarrassed. It's when they're doing like that little kind of conga line thing, and like he's doing like this little kind of weird hip thrusty movement, and the movie's like, no, that's enough of that.
No more of that.
Nobody wants to see that, Michael.
No.
I know you're a producer in this movie, but anyway, it's the next day.
It's the next day. We do need to mention that during the campfire scene, Hawthorne just randomly asked Patterson to exchange weapons, exchange shotguns with them. Why? Because I don't know. His gun has more power, I guess, but that does play into our next day when they go out on the hunt.
That's the other thing that I wanted to mention in terms of my annoyances with this film, and its politics and relationship to characters of color. So the Maasai work, one of the things that irritates me in movies is when you have people who don't speak English, and you have like an English interpreter, and they don't even in this movie. Douglas doesn't really interpret for them much, and they don't subtitle it, so it feels like you're just robbing characters of agency. But I will get off my political hobby horse now.
You're not wrong in it. As a kid, I didn't see this, but as an adult now watching it, because I hadn't seen this in so long, yeah, it's there. It's really there, and they just gloss over it. But we're in, so it's the next day, it's the next hunt, and we're in a grassy little area, and they spotted one of the lions in a thicket, so they're going to kind of trap him. One side on one half of the Maasai warriors on one side, Douglas is on the other, and Patterson is kind of just up on the high ground, making sure that the lion doesn't get out of the thicket. So they all go. They're about really to pounce on it, and the lion is scared, whichever one it is, the ghost or the darkness. They're trapped. They're not going to do anything. But Patterson kind of goes in on his own and comes face to face with the lion, and seemingly going to shoot him again at point blank range. Goes to fire the shotgun, and it misfires, and we get the Jaws dolly zoom, famous the famous dolly zoom from Schneider in Jaws. We get it here on Kilmer, and because he knows he's fucked because his gun doesn't work. But the lion does run off because he's spooked. And Douglas is, I guess, talking down to Kilmer. Really, after this moment until, I guess we'll get there. I don't want to spoil it. But for the rest of the film, Kilmer is very toddlerish, very boyish.
Yeah.
His shoulders are sunken in. His head's always down. He's like ashamed of himself. And I was like, "Oh, poor little Kilmer, you made a mistake." Or as Remington would say, "My friend, you've just been hit."
Yeah, right. So this is weird, okay? Because like he says, as they say in the fight game, or they say something like, as they say in the fight game, everybody has a plan until they get hit. And I was like, what? Did this movie just paraphrase Mike Tyson?
Yep.
What is going on?
I thought that too.
But it's not just, but you've been hit, so you have to, so what happens next is up to you, or whatever.
Yeah, it's the if we're using Batman Games logic, this is the why do we fall, so we can learn to pick ourselves up type inspiring line, right? Definitely does not have an impact at all as strongly as that one did.
That's true.
But yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, you messed up, so now what are you going to do about it?
I really want to know whether it was Michael Douglas or William Goldman who decided to paraphrase Mike Tyson.
or did Mike Tyson paraphrase this movie?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I haven't researched when Tyson delivered that line. I'm sure it was before this though.
I do believe that like everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face line was like pre-96. Because, like, I'm pretty sure he said it in his prime, like, 96, I can't remember if it was 96 or 97 is the famous, like, he bites Evander Holyfield's ear because he's clearly losing the fight and he's all frustrated and that. Like, I feel like that line was said, like, kind of in his pomp, in the kind of probably before he got knocked out by Buster Douglas in the early 90s. So I feel like it was maybe said in the late 80s or something. Just guessing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Tyson line. It's in there. I'm sure, as you were saying, I'm sure Douglas actually was probably watching a Tyson fight. He was like, I want to say that. Again, using the white privilege here. Like, I want to take this black man's line. Anyway, again, glossing over it. The Maasai warriors are spooked by this occurrence, so the Maasai warriors leave. So we are back to us being Patterson with Remington alone in this village. And they're going to go balls out here, and they drench the old hospital in cow's blood, just goat's blood, any type of blood that they can get. They put cows inside, and they're going to bait the lions to come over to them so that they can shoot them.
Did anyone else find this scene quite funny? It's like the reverse of like those 80s movies where they've got to clean up the house before the parents come back. And then, like, it's like this kind of mini montage. I wanted some montage music, but I didn't get it.
You have to put one foot in front of the other. Yeah, that's right. We need.
Let's bloody up the hospital.
Yeah, and it's we kind of get a little moment between Patterson and Remington. Remington is actually congratulating Patterson on the good idea that was the train trap, because Remington actually did something similar to it himself, even though it didn't work for him, or like he said.
Yeah, why is it a good idea? We know that it's failed 3 times. John Patterson tried to do it with a tiger, it didn't work. The lion trap, it didn't work. And obviously, Remington did it, and it didn't work. So, but like both Patterson and Remington are like, yeah, it was still a good idea. It was still solid. In principle, in theory, it's still all totally sound. It's just in practice, it has failed 3 times.
Well, I think because the trap it works with the 3 guys, they just then get spooked and start firing instead of like putting the barrel closer. They just
or through the cage bar.
Yeah,
and
they
then
just
shoot
Yeah,
him.
it's a fair point, Craig. It's a yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Didn't they also had like long swords too that they could have used when the lion was up on it? Idiots. 3 Stooges.
or yell for people, like say, "Hey,
Right.
lion's in here."
have people on the outside shooting in. Yeah, that could have worked too. But very much, like idiots, this plan is very idiot-like, because it doesn't really work. The lions do show up, but they're kind of just sniffing around. But what they really want is men's blood. So they don't spend much time at the old hospital that's been baited. They go over to the new hospital and layeth the smacketh down on all of their candy asses.
And again, the lions again in this movie acting like Jason from the Friday the 13th movies. It's just been like, oh, I see your trap, and
Yep.
I'm not going to be fooled by it. I can see the people that I can murder over there.
And I think this is kind of where I've heard it described. Well, I guess because of the Jaws elements are being dragged off randomly, but this also kind of has that horror element, because you have these lions that are just kind of massacring a huge crowd of people. But I don't know.
Yeah,
but not really possible.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and they're not killing for food, as we are about to find out a little bit later on. Not much of a spoiler, but they learn that they're doing it for the pleasure of killing it. Right, that's where the horror element comes in, or the supernatural element comes in. But yeah, everyone in the hospital, including Hawthorne, the doctor, are killed. They're mauled, and the next day, Abdullah and his workers, they leave. There's no debate. They're on the train. The Jerry Goldsmith score kicks in here, hardcore, and we are left with Patterson, Samuel, and Remington in this little village. And
and the other thing I was going to say there was, like, when Abdullah is on the train, once again, the movie treats him like an antagonist and a coward. And I'm like, I am totally on Abdullah's side. You go, Abdullah. You start your union. You do you.
You are making the right choice.
Abdullah only makes fair points and does the right thing in this movie, and he gets treated like shit for it.
They said stay, they stayed, more people died, they left finally. But now it's both Patterson and Remington have been hit, and Kilmer, again, Irish accent, says, "Getting up's up to you," kind of, sort of. And they go off because they found fresh paw prints, and they go off and they find a lion's den. Thankfully, the lions are not there, but what they do discover is just the remnants of just bones, skulls, ribs, fingers, legs, everything. Just a sea of bones in this cave. And Remington, this is the first time we see him. We see him not confident and a little spooked because he's a game hunter, but lions don't hunt like this. They don't have a lair like this.
I wanted to ask something. I don't know if anybody else found this funny. Like, I think this is maybe just me being childish, and again, it might be entirely historically accurate. I do not know. But like in other movies, you see people like carrying lamps, but they like light like little lamps on like their lapels, and they're like these little mini lamps that I've just written in my notes, cock torch, which is just. I had a little laugh to myself. Maybe I'm just being a little bit immature there.
I do think that is actually accurate.
Probably.
Yeah. I think I've seen them in video games before. Yeah. I don't know. But
they just look kind of silly.
I like cock torch though.
Yeah.
I am the cock torch.
I don't even want to know what that movie is, Caleb.
Yeah, but they leave because they're spooked. And also Kilmer or Patterson says like, "Oh, they'll know we've been here," which is just funny to me. But so they return, and Patterson comes up with another trap idea. This is becoming very Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner-ish, where John is going to use a macon, which I'm not sure if I spelled it correctly. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly here. A macon, which is basically kind of a wooden structure platform that you sit on top of at an elevated angle, and you, like what he was doing in the tree, you just sit up there and you wait for the lions to show up. And we get there at night. They use a baboon to lure in the lions because lions hate the sound of a baboon. The lions eat the baboon, and they see John is up there, and of course there's fog. He can't see anything, and an owl comes flying by, and he falls. And of course the lion is right there, about to pounce on Patterson, but Remington shows up in time and shoots one of the lions, and they scamper off, but they are wounded until and then they
I think
go
we
off.
should I just wanted to flag something from the scene, or maybe a couple of things. Like, I know this is kind of man versus nature movie, so I was kind of thinking, like, are they on the same page, the same team? Like, is the bird assisting the lion? Yeah. Like, I had questions about that, and I also had a little laugh to myself that we started seeing things in what I wrote in my notes as lino vision. Which is kind of like the lion kind of becomes the predator. So he's both Jason and the predator. They are both Jason and.
And this is why I'm curious. So I know, like, in a way, it's almost like it's like a hunting stand or whatever that we'd be accustomed to now. But is it supposed to be so shaky? Because that thing, it's like you could just tap on it and it looks like it's going to topple over. And it's like wobbling the whole time. It like added no security to it.
I suppose if we're to kind of take it as read from the film, it seems like it was like built in a few hours. So maybe that's why.
Well, that's the reason why Remington is like, no, I ain't getting up there. You're gonna be up there. I'm gonna be in a tree on the other side of camp. So I mean, kudos to Remington. I would be the same thing. Like, hey, we'll build it. I ain't getting up there. Oh, and by the way, Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and he's
this is where we find out it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah,
that's right.
And he's just walking around through the kind of area too, without any care. Val Kilmer, Patterson's up on this thing being attacked, and then there's Remington just kind of moseying along, walking through. Like, you're not worried at all. You're on the ground.
One of these people are more vulnerable than the other.
I know, the super experienced, legendary hunter. Yeah, okay.
Yes, but so they run off because he's wounded, or one of them is wounded, and it goes on for a couple more minutes. The lion appears and is trying to pounce onto Patterson. Remington turns, points his gun, and fires, and that lion is killed. One of the ghosts in the darkness is done for. One lion down. And to celebrate, they get drunk around the campfire that night while listening to the other lion's roars of disapproval, because he's a bully and he's now afraid. He's alone.
When I was watching this scene, I was thinking, like, you know, this is like several months in now to their trip. And everybody's abandoned camp, basically. Where did they get those 3 bottles of Moët Chandon from?
I would assume that they had them there at the start because it's something that they were going to crack into once the project was built.
Yeah,
I would assume, but yeah, you're right. Where do they get that? Well, Beaumont brought it. That's why.
I also wanted to ask you both about the attacks. One of the kind of notes I kept making throughout the movie was about the editing. Like, I felt like a lot of the attacks don't really have much weight to them because they're edited in this way where you like get a close-up of like a victim's face and a close-up of the lion's face and then a sort of interaction, but it doesn't kind of the kind of geography of the attacks kind of don't add up in my mind, kind of thing. So it felt like a lot of the attacks were actually kind of weightless and didn't have the kind of tension and scares that, you know, I would, you know, expect from like a good horror movie, for example. So I just wondered what you guys thought about that.
Yeah, it never seems to get into the full, which I know you could go both ways, because it's bloody. It tries to have some gore elements, but it never gets into the actual watching of, which may be the Oscar, as you were talking about before, the Oscar Beatty element to it, of not wanting to show all of the gore that would happen. Yeah. But yeah, it's I guess one of those tone things for me that I noticed.
Do we know what rating this film has? Is it PG-13 or R? I can't remember.
Well, I don't know. Like, I just know like when I watched it on Amazon, the rating in the UK is a 15, which is generally the equivalent to an R rating over your way.
I can.
Yeah. Well, to me, yeah. I mean, it felt like they were trying to do the Jaws thing where you have the cuts of the terror and the people screaming and maybe a very quick blood spurt here and there, but they never linger on the monster devouring or eating anything. And then once we do get to the full-on shots of the lion, they are pretty obviously CGI'd or cut in from other actual filmings of lions and kind of just spliced onto it.
That's true. And some of the effects, even the practical effects, some of them are quite silly. When they're in the hospital that they bloodied up, the original hospital, there's a bit where one of the lions attacks Patterson, Val Kilmer's character, through a window, and it does just look like a man wearing a lion's paw, like, that punches through the window.
So it was rated R in the States too.
It was? Oh, okay. Yeah. Then, wow, I don't know. They could have gone harder on it, definitely. Again, I think it's just
it's not necessarily the hardness of the violence. It's just like it doesn't feel like it kind of feels like two separate things are happening. It doesn't kind of add up in my mind. It feels so disconnected.
Yeah.
At least there's still, even though Jaws is edited in a very clever way that makes you feel like you're watching more violence than you are, whereas this is like almost the opposite of just being like, what? Like, this just feels like it should be, I don't know, like it should have more impact.
Yeah, there's a lot of telling of what they're doing. Like they've killed 100 people. Really? Okay, I don't remember seeing that, but sure.
Yeah, but we'll move along to the plot, and as much as I laughed at Michael Douglas dancing with the Maasai warriors, this next scene is the funniest scene in the movie. So it cuts to what seems like the next day. Patterson's wife has come to the worksite. The people are back at the worksite. Oh, this is amazing. Like, it seems kind of confusing. Only one lion's dead, the other one's still out there. But people are back at work, and his wife's come to see him. It's a good day. And Emily Mortimer, again, totally wasted in this movie. She is just kind of perma-smiling, just looks totally glaikit. Sorry, I'm just using Scots now. Glaikit is like a kind of dumb look of just kind of nothing there, I'm explaining this badly. Sorry, this podcast has become Scott explains Scots badly. But anyway. She's got a dumb look on her face, and she's kind of waving off, and Val is waving back to her, but she can't see him, but then in the corner of his eye he sees a lion in the fields, and he's like, oh no, and he's trying to wave to his wife, oh no, the lion's coming to get you, and the lion just pounces on her in the funniest scene in the movie, and just mauls her. Like, I suppose when I describe it, it sounds like I'm a mean person finding this scene so funny, but genuinely go and watch the movie. This scene is hilarious. Turns out it's actually a dream in the end, but it's so funny.
Yeah, I will back you up on it being funny, because my wife walked in the previous scene when they're around the campfire drinking. She walked in and sat down, and then when it cuts to the scene and you see the lion tail in the fields, she goes, and the lion's gonna eat her. And I look over, I'm like, yup, he is. She's like, oh really? I was just joking. That's actually gonna happen. Okay.
Oh man.
But it's, fool you once, this is all a dream. That's not really happening. Yeah. It's the dreaded it was all a dream.
Yeah. Well, because too, when they were at the camp and they were drinking, it was the one moment where it's like the heartfelt part, where they're talking about what is your, I forgot what the answer was, or what was even the question, but what is your your motivation for it, or what is the one thing you wish for? And Michael Douglas talks about the family that he never had, and each one of them say something, which then goes into that whole, you're a real charming fellow when you get to know you, or something. That's their last laugh, and he says you hold that son high when you meet him and stuff like that. Yeah. And again, you hear all this talk between all them, and you're like, in the same way with the letter with Mahina, you're like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah, and they find him dead the next morning. I was disappointed. This character has been built up so much, Remington, legendary badass hunter, and they kill him off screen.
You don't even see the body or anything?
No.
I remember as a kid watching this for the first time thinking, he's on the damn poster. He's in the frickin' front of it, and he's killed off like this. The fuck? Come on. But they light the fields on fire. They light his corpse or whatever's remaining on fire. And Kilmer is going full Rambo here with all the guns.
Gonna sort it out.
He's gonna sort it out.
Yeah, I've just put in my notes, this means war, close up of bloody face. Like,
and you know what? You're right about the whole Jason Voorhees comparison to this lion, because did you know the lion can do jump scares?
Yeah, the lion can do jump scares. Yes.
The the lion has like parkour skills and can flip onto the bridge and jump in between levels.
I was always wondering that when Remington was getting up into the tree at the beginning of this movie. I'm like, is that going to help you? Because cats climb very well. Lions climb things very well. But okay.
I love this is one of my favorite things as well. You know, like you see this in a bunch of other action movies that are not like animal based, but are like kind of natural disaster based, where some random action star is like outrunning floods, or they're like people are outrunning tornadoes or whatever. And again, in this movie, we've got Val outrunning a lion. And I know he's got a slight head start, but not enough of a head start to outrun a lion.
I
For a
wrote
long
that down
distance too. Yeah.
I mean, it's like across that whole bridge, and then he runs to the tree as well. So I mean, it's at least a few hundred meters he's managed to outrun this lion.
Yeah, and he climbs the tree faster than the lion.
Yeah, and this is where I was thinking, like, we're getting the splicing in of an actual shot of a lion, hunting in the wild, like for real, because you look at the quality of Kilmer, and then you look back at the lion on the bridge, and you go, that you're not really on that bridge, are you, lion? This is not a trained lion that we have here. This is cut in.
Yeah.
But he's fires every single shot of every gun that he has. Samuel is there, throws his shotgun, but it gets caught up in the branches and falls to the ground. So Kilmer jumps from the top of the tree down and takes the shotgun and shoots the lion. And just like that, this movie is really done.
Well, it even does a full-on... It does the Jason thing again, where the lion shot once because it's a double barrel and still keeps crawling toward him, and then he has to shoot it again.
And it's dead for now.
Yeah.
Until next time, when the storm awakens him or whatever.
Yeah. Ghosts in the Darkness 2 in space.
The lions take Manhattan.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah. Ghost in the Darkness too. Ghost in the Darkness, go to hell.
Yeah.
The Ghost in the Darkness, the final chapter.
Yeah.
Oh,
the Ghost in the Darkness, Dream Warriors.
Yeah.
No,
we're just conflating franchises. Yeah. Ghost in the Darkness, a new nightmare.
Yeah.
Ghost in the Darkness 2000.
Ghost in the Darkness versus Predator. That actually works. Actually, I just because like they're kind of big game hunting movies, so like that actually maybe we can pitch that to Paramount.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm picturing a predator on top of a pyramid and all these lions coming up and trying to kill him.
Ah, dear.
I like this bit. This was going on a little too long, but I like it.
Yeah, no, it's been overextended. This joke has been driven into the ground.
Yes.
So maybe Craig, can you wrap up the movie for us? Tell us how this movie ends.
So it ends almost like The Dream, where he's still cut up, but you assume it's been kind of either a few days or a few weeks or something. It doesn't really give an amount of time. But people are starting to come back. The workers are, and he sees that his wife and their son is coming off the train. He starts heading toward her to the train station area, and on his way there, he sees Abdullah, and they kind of give a little salute thing to each other of a sign of respect, I guess.
Completely undeserved, but yes.
Yeah. And then he finally gets to his wife, and it's not even like he's really happy to see her, but obviously it's more about the child, and she hands him his son, and he raises his son up, which even though we watch him raise his son up high, Samuel makes sure in the narration to tell us that he raised his son up high.
I
then we
was
get
really
the-
half
yeah.
expecting, like, you know, because we mentioned The Lion King earlier. Like, I was half expecting, like, Sabimya.
Yeah.
I have it in my notes. Some like circle of life right here.
Yeah. And then then Samuel starts, he kind of tells about that what Caleb said earlier on, where that you can find the lions in Chicago, and if you stare in their eyes, you'll still be I can't remember, Caleb knows the line better, but you'll still be afraid to this day.
Yes, I think it's if you lock eyes, you will be afraid.
Yeah.
Which I have, and I was not afraid, but it was still cool.
Yeah.
It is cool to have a tangibility to this movie of like, wow, it is kind of real here. The events here actually did happen.
All of it was 100% real, except the parts that weren't.
Every single thing happened.
This was an absolutely true story, apart from all the parts that weren't true.
Yeah, because
And
in the true story, he just killed them both himself with I don't know if he had help or not, but
I'm sure he had other people helping them bait them. I think the real story is that they killed, at least like combining with like flesh wounds and things like that, totaling of like 35 or 40 people as opposed to 150 or whatever the grand total was.
Well,
but
yeah, apparently in the real guy, the real John Henry Patterson, apparently he claimed in his book that they killed like 135 people, but then later more modern research looked into it, and it seems like it was like maybe like 35 to 40 people, something in that range, that he was just kind of talking it up for his own legend, I suppose.
Yeah. I think he was like a technicality of it, to where like, well, this person, their arm was ripped off, and this other person had their leg bit off, and it was like, hey, if you combine all of these flesh wounds, it equals like maybe that amount of people, but in real life, it was just like 30 or 40.
Yeah.
Sure. But that's in the darkness.
That is the Ghost in the Darkness. We did it, guys. We have covered all aspects of this movie, I feel, and a lot of aspects that are not in the movie, that were just us going off on kind of mad tangents, as we did towards the end there with that very, very long Jason bit, which I hope people enjoy. I hope it's one of those jokes where it was like, oh, it was funny, and then it got real old, but then we managed to pull the audience back around again. Hopefully, that's what happened. But we will now wrap this episode up. But before we do that, as always, we'll get into some plugs. So, Caleb, you do your plugs first.
Yeah, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Caleb Watches Movies, where I randomly select any of the movies that I own or any that are recommended to me, whether it's through comments or PayPal donations. Do little quick reviews of about 9 to 10 minutes of just films at random. So if you can get over there and just give me a subscription, check out a couple of my reviews, it would be greatly appreciated. And you can find me on really all social media at Caleb Watches Movies.
And Craig?
Yep. You can find me at, as Scott mentioned, I'm 1/3 of the Bloodhound Picks podcast. Bloodhound, all one word, and then PIX. On our website, bloodhoundpicks.com, or Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of those. We highlight older, obscure, and independent horror movies, and then we'll also highlight and give spotlights to people within kind of the independent horror community, be it vloggers, reviewers, filmmakers, actors, scholars, etc. And then, but if you're interested in following me personally, you can follow me at either craig.dram, Draheim, on Instagram, or just Craig Dram on Twitter.
And if you fancy listening to more of me, you can on my other podcast, New Horror Express, which was weekly for a while, but now is being back to fortnightly. I chat to various people working in the indie horror industry, mainly horror film directors, but also sometimes novelists and actors and screenwriters. So you can check that out. And that show also has a spin-off show called the Guilty Pleasure Podcast, where I look at 21st century horror guilty pleasures. You can follow that on Twitter and Facebook. Twitter is @NewHorrorEXP. For this show, you can follow us on Twitter. That's @90s_all. Or if you want to talk to me directly, you can also hit me up on Twitter @ScottMurphy85. But that's all for this week. Please do join us again. Oh, I didn't give the kind of plug for the reviews. Like, if you want to leave a review, I know this episode's been long. I know some of the gags have gone on too long, and maybe there's been too much hilarity in this episode. But if you did like what you listened to, please give us a review. It's the best way you can support us, and it really helps with the algorithm. And if you can make those reviews 5 stars, that would be great. It would be greatly appreciated. The algorithm believes that we are rubbish if you give less than 5 stars. Don't know why. It's a weird world we live in, but that's how it is. But yes, if you did enjoy it, please, that is the best way you can support the show. And also, it'd be great if you can support the show by just telling other people that, like, oh, there's this cool new show that covers 90s action movies. But anyway, we really appreciate anybody who listens and anybody who gives us a shout out or like leaves a review. So thank you very much for that. But that really is all for this week. Please do join us again next week for our Val Kilmer season finale, where we will be looking at 1997's The Saint. But until then, see ya.